I am not a fox hunt expert, but if I can do it, any idiot can do this. So,
I'm in.
Yeah.
Second that
So what
motion.
Tim just put up on the shelf over there is a little micro fox. If you want to see what these things are, you can go to Bionics, BYONICS, bionics.com. They have a whole bunch of different types of foxes you can get, and that's their little cheapo fox in a box. It's just a little battery and an antenna on top. So I tried to set this up at the house to see if we could do a demo without having to run outside in the field. So that little fox has a 30 dB pad on it. So it's really putting out a weak signal over there. And the goal tonight is just this is just an intro to 101 primer, which is a couple of very basic techniques you can use to try to find a fox. So you might wonder, why do we even bother playing the fox hunt game? Well, it's practice for when you're really trying to find a spurious transmitter. Now I remember back, my first experiences with this was in 1987, 1988, back when cable was analog, and one of the carriers, the video carriers, was on 145.25. We also had a lot of repeaters on 145.25. The FCC requires cable TV systems to be closed. The cable operators were rather sloppy and they tended to be open, and I know that because I was the cable guy. And one of my jobs was driving around with a little receiver on the front of the service van, and it was tuned to 145.25, and every time we heard the go by a leak, and start, you have to stop and record it and make a report and all this and that. Some systems were so bad that the FCC required the cable systems to actually hire a contractor to fly an airplane and a grid pattern over the system and average out the average noise on 145.25, and that was how much of a fine you'd have to pay. So the amateurs got very proficient at finding cable TV leaks at 145.25. You'd be surprised you could have a leak that was 3 or 4 miles away and was screwing up the repeater. It was bad, and it was splattering all over the place. Of course, now cable systems are digital and they tend to be more closed and so on, but we still have issues. We've had issues in the village, right, with spurious inputs. We had one 2 weeks ago, I think, on that you were experiencing it. The only way to fix those problems is to go out hunting for them. We had a problem in a repeater years ago in Connecticut that was keying up spuriously. We could never identify it. It wasn't the cable system. And it turns out it was a bad high voltage insulator on a telephone pole that had been involved in a car accident a few months before, and it cracked the insulator. If it was humid but wasn't raining, it was just in the right conditions to arc across and cause a problem. Nobody could find it, the power company couldn't find it, phone company couldn't find it, so we had a fox hunt. And we found it, we fixed it, identified it as the power company could fix it. So there's a reason we play with fox hunts. It's also a whole lot of fun to try to find fox. And sometimes when you think it's easy, Sam and I did a fox hunt over in Maryville, Alcoa. Oh yeah, we were
Walked past it a couple times.
we were sniffing, we were hard on it, and we were just flying right to it until we could have kicked the thing, we couldn't find it because we got that close to it. So, you know, there's hunting from a distance and then hunting close up, and there's all these different techniques, and there's guys that were snickering because they found it, they walked away, and we were like blithering idiots out there who couldn't find the thing. That's part of the fun. So that fox is turned on, it's a little tiny battery on it, and it's running. Now, the different types of foxes will make different kinds of signals. The Bionics ones will put out a tone, and then it will put out a CW signal. So that one, if you've got a radio, you can actually tune it in right now. It's 147.585. And this is what it sounds like.
David, bring it here, please. Can I hear it?
Can you hear it?
Is there something to hear?
This is going to be on for 15 seconds, then off for 15 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So
There we go.
I'll just stand here.
Gotcha.
Now,
Thank you.
some contests they make the Fox operate for maybe 10 seconds, and then the rest of the minute it's quiet. So you gotta kind of look real quick, and then run, and then wait, and then look real quick, and run and wait. There are some Fox hunts that actually use a repeater, a radio that's set up on a crossband repeat. Those are the real fun ones, where a person is off at Fox control, and at the top of the minute, he gets on his radio, but you're actually transmitting with a Fox, and he'll give a clue. Like, I'm in a building that was built in 1872, ha ha ha, click, and then, you know. So you're not only working towards physically tracking it, but you're trying to figure out the details. So what I'm going to try to do, and it'll either work or fail miserably, is show you just a couple of basic methods to try to find the Fox. The first is your antenna. If you try to just use a regular HT, you can tell strength, but you can't tell direction. That's okay if you've got a couple people who have the same radio and you're playing this kind of ad hoc triangulating thing, but we don't have enough hair as it is, that's just too painful. So using a beam, using a simple, this is an arrow, it was taken apart this morning for the first time in like 5 years because it was taken up in the garage. That's what I was trying to screw it together, and I was just trying to figure out how to put the thing back together again. But this thing coils up and it goes into this bag, so in theory you can store it.
You got that from DX Engineering, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
And now comes the edit. This is actually my daughter's and it's 20 years old. So
She do satellite.
they'll put the antenna on there. I'm now hearing it, of course I'm pointed right at it. So you've got the pause. It's either going to work or it isn't going to work. So as we aim away from it, we can hear it getting a little noisier.
And cross-polarized, and
And towards it a little closer. That's 101, right? The very basis of a directional antenna. Thing to watch out for, and it bit us more than once over Maryville. Remember beams? You've got the back lobe.
Yeah.
So you might be thinking it's over there, but it's over here. So you really got to look both ways. And that's number one, right? I told you it's be simple, just directionality. Number two is polarity. Again, if that was weaker, you could hear it clearer or farther away. And that's to your advantage. If you're in an area where you're getting kind of close to it and you can't really make out directions, shift it so it gets a little noisier. And you might have better luck zeroing in on where it is. And then the third is attenuators. And Mike has an attenuator box. I know there was a number of attenuator boxes that were over at the last couple contests. You can make them with just a couple of resistors, right? You can flip in the resistors and add the value that you want. You can spend some money and buy a commercial one if you want. One problem is if you're with a Fox that is putting out a halfway decent signal and you're anywhere near the Fox, you may be attenuating the signal on the antenna, but if you've got a cheapo whatever these things are, where it's not shielded in the first place, you've got all kinds of signal getting around the antenna and getting into the radio. So that might not work. When I was setting up, a couple days before, I was setting up the Fox hunt that we did up at the Wellness Center with the cheapo bow phone, and it had a bunch of attenuators on. I couldn't get rid of the signal. So I grabbed the Reynolds wrap, and I wrapped the whole radio up 4 times, and I still couldn't. So I guess it's the best 20 bucks money can buy. If you're using a better radio, like one of the Yaesus, that's not really a problem because the shielding on the case is a whole lot better. So you've got, depending on the Fox hunt, you've got clues that might be given ahead of time or clues that are given on the radio as you go on. That's one technique. You've got your antenna and your directionality towards what you're looking for. That's a second. You've got your polarity. which way you turn. That would be number 3. Number 4 would be attenuators that you put in line on your receiver to try to attenuate that signal so you can discriminate where you are. Number 5 was the one that we failed at miserably, and they're called eyeballs. Sam and I were looking for one. They put it similar to what you've done for Saturday, similar to what we had for up at the wellness center. It was on a PVC container. It wasn't a little thing like this that you couldn't see. They told us it'd be right within viewing range, and they put it vertically up against the back of the tree, and we never thought to go look behind the tree. So we were tripping over it, and we, and it was frustrating because the signal was bouncing all over the place. I mean, you're right up next to it. There's no directionality, and people were walking by sneaker, and we couldn't figure it out. So, number 5, use your eyeballs.
It was green.
Yeah, and the tree was brown.
Does anybody else have a credit card slip?
What was your question?
If anybody else has credit card slips, Miss Gail's gonna start working on money.
So you got the,
We
Yes.
also use radio without any antenna too at some point.
yes, take
Radio.
it completely
It
off.
get really close. I noticed that thing drops out when I pull this antenna off this cable.
Right, because we've got it attenuated down. The next one is don't presume that it's at your same plane. It could be in a tree. It could be.
I was looking in the trash cans.
Yeah. I went to one once, and it was actually buried in the ground in the middle of the field, so all there was a little antenna sticking up. So unless you stood on it, you wouldn't know it. Some of the harder ones that'll take the radio, I remember this one, I almost lynched the guy who did it. His call sign, by the way, N1CTF, John Chartoff, he was at Field Day last year. N1CTF, no one catches the fox. He was the fox. He rarely ever caught the fox. We were at high school. He gave the clues and got everybody from 6 towns away. We got all the way to the school. We're walking around like bumbling idiots in the backyard of the school. We're over by the ball field. It turns out he had taken a mobile radio that was on a crossband. He took the antenna and he clipped it to the end of a 100-foot section of chain link fence.
Oh, man. The whole fence.
The
That's
whole
not
fence
fair.
was radiated. I almost lynched him.
No kidding.
So, as fox hunts, you really kind of know, you got to kind of sniff around when you start a fox hunt. Are they setting it up as an easy one or an intermediate one, or are the organizers snickering? To give them clues how difficult it would be. When we did the one at the wellness center, the one back here, we put in the nook of a tree.
Yeah, that's
Remember
right.
that? So everybody was walking around, and because it's black, there wasn't anything showing on it. It was hard to see.
Even the green one was difficult, because I walked upon it and
Yeah.
walked past it twice.
Laying down in the field.
Yeah, because you're not looking down, you're not thinking about that, and it was just sticking out there like a little piece of PVC you'd see in an irrigation system, so it kind of didn't register.
Now, let's see if I can explain this properly. This is another technique. You can build one of these yourself, or you can just pay whatever it costs from Bionics and buy it. This is what they call the active attenuator, and it's got a little battery and button cell on it. If you turn it off, it just passes the signal through, just a little attenuation. So you just leave it on the radio with that caveat that you'll probably end up breaking the radio off because those little SMA connectors, they snap off easy. But what it does when you turn it on is it mixes the received signal with I'm remembering a 1 megahertz carrier, and so you tune the radio 1 meg higher or low, so you're getting the harmonic, which is attenuated down. And then the volume control, if you will, controls the RF level of that oscillator. So that acts as a variable attenuator.
So you need one for VHF and one for UHF?
Nope, this just works on both bands. You just have to tune yourself in to be 1 meg off. And if it's working and the battery hasn't died, there's a little yellow light that clicks on. So again, this will either work or so I'll tune this to 146. 585. Issues, please. So go back to 147, make sure I actually.
It is trying to.
Okay, so that's there.
146,585.
Is it still there? Or is it in that silent mode?
That's silent now. It's bad. Turn the volume off. Green light means it's on.
You'll put your eye out. Yes, this is where I may have to get closer though.
That's what the rubber things are for.
Back off again.
It's off.
Yeah, and we're kind of artificial because we got that big attenuator on there.
Back on.
There we go. So I tune it up, I get it to where it shuts off. So you can use that as an attenuator as you can get closer and closer towards the signal. So that's a commercial unit, but you can make them yourself. So those are just some of the techniques, the idea of just going out there with an antenna and trying to track it down, you're just gonna pull your hair out and get frustrated. So you can use active attenuators, you can use attenuators, passive attenuators on your radio. Don't forget your eyeball height, maybe you're in front of you, maybe high, maybe low. The directional antenna, and your orientation for the antenna. And also look at other clues, like are there hints being given on the radio? Is it that sort of a feel of an event? And trying to solicit from the folks beforehand just how difficult it is. They can give you some idea to let you know if you're going to be going crazy or if it's going to be a simple one. That said, I did do organized a fox hunt, which was probably the funnest one we ever had in Vermont. It was after a Girls on the Run race. We had everybody together, we set them in the parking lot, gave them no clues, just gave them the frequency and cut them loose. And it was a directional beam that was 2 miles down a dirt road on an entrance into a state park. But because it was going to the state park, the warden said that we couldn't just leave a hidden radio there because someone might think it was a bomb. So we actually had a fluorescent yellow piece of paper on it that said, "This is an amateur radio transmitter. This is not a pipe bomb. Please do not call the police. If you have a question, call this person's cell phone number," which was an inside joke because it's Vermont, there's no cell signals. But when they got there and they found it, they put a sign over in the back and said, "Great, now tune to the next frequency." Because there was 2 foxes and the other one was 4 miles in the other direction with a beam.
Oh, wow.
And when they got to the second one, they were told to go to the 3rd location, which is where we had the pizza farm.
Oh, nice.
Don't always expect it just 1 fox. And you guys are doing 2 foxes?
6. No, 2. We did have some vendors step up and kick down some pretty good prizes. We're going to be giving away like the gallon size hand sanitizer, smoking dog statue, UV8, Bofang. And there'll be a lot of fun. Not quite as treacherous as what Dave said, but MJF's got some good ideas, and we're gonna run with them. And watch you
The
from
foxes this time on the same band or?
No, they're on same band,
Same
2
band,
different
2 different
frequencies.
frequencies.
Yep. At the same time.
That's important. Don't go to a VHF fox hunt with
UHF?
UHF equipment.
Are they going to, are you going to have 2 different like levels, like one that's pretty easy to find and then one that's for the, you know?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, I just figured you might have a beginner, you know, the bunny slope, and then you have, you know, the
Any beginner
diamond, black
that's
diamond.
attending can be put in with somebody that's experienced. We're not gonna make you pull your hair out, but you're gonna work for it.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just curious.
How long?
As long as it takes. It's not gonna be 4 miles, I guarantee that.
Is it a walking or a driving?
It's walking.
Okay, just curious.
Let's have a peek at that, right there. This is what again? This is
This is the microfox.
the bionic.
This is N2ESK.
All right. Outstanding. Well, thank you, David.
Yeah, great job.